Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 21 of the Wolves of Westminster Down the Pub podcast. I am your host, Peter Simpson. I am a contributor to Wolves of Westminster and run the Haryan Gláeddyv channel. I tonight am joined by the editor of Wolves of Westminster, Patrick Timms. Hello, Patrick.
Good evening, sir.
I'm also joined by Wolves of Westminster contributor Simon. Hello, Simon.
Good evening, Peter.
And finally, because we have a full house, we've got Peter Barnes, contributor to Wolves of Westminster and plenty of times guest on Talk TV. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Peter. That's always fun to
do. Other Peter, yes, quite. So, obviously, another one of those weeks. Same joke. Oh, usually it's the last interesting things you talk about, but plenty again has happened this week, including Reform announcing a shadow cabinet, which I think it's fair for us to say can't be a shadow cabinet. That's for the opposition party, His Majesty's opposition party, which of course is the Tories. But it does look good in the papers when they try and claim that they are. But all the papers call them spokesmen or spokeswomen in the case of Suella Braverman. So, they're all pretty much expected, I'd say. The biggest surprise definitely was Robert Jenrick as the Chancellor, I suppose, Shadow Chancellor, but realistically, economics spokesman. So, who also came out with a speech this week, which I would say I did enjoy it. It was very, very safe, which I think is what the voters particularly want, given that's one of their big potholes for Reform. We don't trust you with the economy. Okay, we'll just sound like Tories for an hour. And I think it went well, personally.
I think it's piece of potholes for councillors.
No, I'm going to say I'll chime in on this one. It's quite interesting because there was a news story out literally just this afternoon that apparently Robert Jenrick sent his speech to George Osborne to make sure it was okay. So if you're wondering why he sounded like a Tory, it was basically checked over by the Tory of all Tories. That's probably why. But I do think you're right there, Peter, that this is a major pothole for Reform, the economy. It is the biggest issue. It always is. And it's a big area. And I think Robert Jenrick is an interesting choice, considering the two money men, Zia Youssef and Richard Tice, didn't get the chancellorship. I think that's going to be an interesting conversation, behind closed doors, that I'd love to find out why all of that, because I do think it was part of the agreement for Jenrick to jump, was to get one of the big four offices. I do find it interesting with no defense secretary, given everything that's going on in the world, and with no foreign affairs kind of person. I think that's quite an interesting choice, but we've got business and skills, so that's something. But I agree. I think the speech was safe. It had to be an interesting reversal on the two-child benefit cap, because they've been all over the place on that one. They've flip-flopped more times than Bondi Beach. But I have to admit, safe speech, pretty standard, really.
Yeah. No, I will.
One thing that I
go on.
One thing I found very interesting, actually, two things I found interesting. Number one, as you say, we've got no foreign secretary in this particular lineup. Now, this whole cabinet, I am told, leaked due to somebody who I perhaps won't name on the stream, but I will say this leaked about 1.5 weeks ago, this whole cabinet, and Nadhim Zahawi was supposed to be the foreign secretary. But I believe they've been let off at the last minute. And I'm not entirely sure why, but I will say that today, when they appointed the new cabinet secretary, who I'm sure we'll get into, Zia Youssef and Tice immediately condemned her, and Nadhim Zahawi tweeted, "What a good choice." So I think almost immediately this guy's been making enemies in the office, and I think at the last minute they thought that the reaction to Nadhim Zahawi being appointed as Shadow Foreign Secretary or Foreign Spokesman, whatever you want to call him, would have been very negative. And the second thing I noticed was I had always predicted that they were going to give the chancellorship to Zia and sort of snub Tice. But what actually happened was that they sort of, in a way, snubbed both of them and gave them to Jenrick. But I think that actually, aside from the fact they want to abdicate economic policy somewhat to Jenrick, because he's going to be the sort of sensible man in a pair of glasses and a tie, is because they are potentially trying to sow a little bit of discontent amongst this group of shadow cabinet people, so that instead of somebody like Jenrick trying to make manoeuvres on Farage, he's having to defend against Zia or Tice trying to get his job.
Well, sometimes, I'll just nip in on that one. Sometimes, I mean, if you look at the May government, which did have a huge challenge to deal with, and the argument I think is long past now as to how well it did with that, but it did know it was going to contend with these huge issues. So what did she do? She made Philip Hammond Chancellor because I shan't insult the man and say he's quite boring. In fact, I believe he was spreadsheets fill. But sometimes, if you know you've got a lot of stuff to have to deal with, which they will if they get in, what you want in your Chancellor is a safe pair of hands, and I think that was May's reason as well. So I can actually see it, an experienced hand.
There's just to defend the Zia and Tice appointment as well. Tice's bugbear has always been energy. He absolutely hates wind farms and for some reason battery storage systems. I'm trying to get my head around that one personally. However, I
think that was anti-low personally. I think that was more of
I agree with you on that. I think it's anti-low.
well, hopefully he drops that then. I understand once they catch fire, they can't really be put out, but I also do know that the Fire Brigade Union are coming up with plans to deal with that. I'm actually writing a policy paper on that, so hopefully that'll be out at some point. But also with Zia Yusuf, his obsession obviously is migration. That is a big reason he's famous. So putting him in the Home Secretary to, for lack of a better term, shut out about migrants all the time. And he came out with a really good video about it as well, to be fair, which, as we'll get into in a sec, is very similar to another party that started recently. So I think it makes sense to put them there. And then even then, to add on to the whole wise generic there, you have to be safe and put someone boring there, as we'd already said. But also, if it all goes wrong, he gets thrown under the bus. And it's their shakiest point. So he can be the man they throw under the bus.
He's a former Treasury Minister as well, we'll give him that.
And like I say, are you? I'm going to repeat that bit. Basically, I think if it doesn't go well for Rupert, you're going to have headlines along the lines of highs and lows.
Oh well, yeah. Well, we may as well get into that now because obviously, Farage was asked about Rupert Lowe, and his reply was effectively, "I hate the man." And he's not going to be he's not going to be anyone in, by the next election at the very least, which I've been looking into this quite a lot recently, especially if you've followed my Twitter account, which I've even had likes from some of the higher ups at Reform from things I've been saying. But it is quite clear that, the initial launch was thrown out last Friday, I believe. I think it was
for Restore Britain.
For Restore Britain, sorry, yes, let's mention that, to be fair to Rupert Lowe. So this Rupert Lowe's party, which it's developed from his movement, which the success of that is, I couldn't really tell you what they've done aside from the rape gang inquiry, so they ended the rape gang inquiry at 1:30 in the afternoon, and then they launched this party at 7 p.m, which I've always been questioning that timing. Why don't you let that breathe, is always my question, and I don't really want to say it on this podcast as to make any accusations or anything like that, but it seems like strange timing to me, and I'm not the only person I've talked to about. I know other people who've questioned that too. But leaving, Well, do you want to add in there?
I was just going to say, I think actually the entire damn point of it was to lead up, and sometimes you do that in politics.
Quite, which I can't say I appreciate, but it is what it is. But
I'm just going to say, from a media standpoint, we were all absolutely infuriated because you're halfway through shows by that point at 7 o'clock. Most of the news is usually set, and yet that happened, and everything just got thrown out. Yeah. And I have to admit, they didn't make many friends, so it wasn't really the smartest move. But I will, just to be the kind of balance here, I do think the Rupert Lowe's video at his launch has been relatively successful because of the number of times I've been asked to talk about it. It's rather ridiculous, I have to admit, that the people are saying, they aren't going anywhere, yet it's all we seem to talk about at the moment. I know obviously it's a big story at the time, but if this trend continues, I do still think that they don't have to win a seat. They just have to mean that Reform don't win a seat for them to be effective, or them to cause problems. And I think that's the bigger thing that a lot of the Reform UK kind of base haven't quite realised yet.
But just picking up Peter B on the, as a fellow media person, do you not think also sometimes there is a strategy in the media to deliberately talk something to death, almost like filibustering something in Parliament, so that you're just going to talk about them for ages until people get bored of them, and that's basically how you filibuster them? Do you think it might be a possibility of that?
I think you might be onto something there, but I don't know. It's the way that they've come out quite ferociously, Restore, in terms of the kind of the way that they've really been on the media. They've had some rather controversial interviews. Some things have been said, and on all sides of this. But I'm not quite sure how well it's gone overall, in terms of whether they're going to be effective in terms of winning anything. But I do think that they have put the cat amongst the pigeons when it comes to reform, because I'm going to say that Nigel looked pretty rattled, and he looks rather annoyed every time he gets asked about Rupert Lowe, every single time, which is understandable because he wants to change the narrative. But I sometimes wonder, was the announcement of the shadow cabinet rather pushed up the agenda so that they could have a little bit of control over a news cycle or two? That's one of my big wonders.
That's a
Speaking of control, I just need to throw in one point here. I don't really know what Reform's line on Restore is, because you've had Leila Cunningham come out with the whole neo-Nazis thing, and then you have Farage saying, "Well, I don't care about them; they're not relevant." I'm not really figuring out what to say.
Message discipline at Reform UK. There's a shock.
I will say on that the message discipline, you can basically just assume it comes from Nigel. It is basically just say they're nobodies, who cares. Layla was directly asked though about a particular policy, about what obviously Charlie Downs, the campaigns director for Restore Britain, said. Which, I suppose that's really what sort of caused an awful lot of conversation about them, because obviously at launch everyone talks about the launch. Yes, it's a very good video. I have to say it was pretty much indistinguishable from Reform's ones as well. I don't know what the difference is. So Charlie Downs comes out to basically say, well, you have to have ancestry and be Christian, which I don't know anyone in Britain that would agree those are two defining parts of being British, personally.
Well, we have online, yeah. we have Simon here, who came over here when he was 8. He's of Polish ancestry, but all you can hear in his accent is Stoke.
Yeah, he sounds like me.
I'm not quite sure whether I would take that as a compliment or not.
Well, my point
counts as British, I don't know.
Well, you could be to an island by all means. Of course, you know where it comes from. It was the old Polish diasporas from after the World War. And then the overspill for that is Crewe, where I am at the moment. But at the same time, I've worked with and lived with plenty of Polish people whose English is usually moderate, and you can certainly hear it, but you can't hear it with Simon, which, as I said to you, as you recall, Simon, I think it was the first or probably second time that we met.
Yes, quite.
I said, you've just become 10 times more interesting, because I'm a linguist. So it's, and then I identified, do you remember, that your accent was unfamiliar to me, even if it's the language I don't speak, but I have an ear. And then you said, yeah, from the East, kind of thing. Coming back to the religious elements of it, Peter B., are you a man of faith?
Oh no, darling, no. I'm rather the kind of the antithesis of it, I'm afraid. I want to say though that Charlie didn't say you had to be a Christian. He did say you had to have Christian values. That is a big distinction between the two, because most of our law is based on Judeo-Christian values and all that kind of thing, which I think is what he was driving at. But it was very lazily put. It wasn't the best interview I've ever seen, and I have to admit, it made everybody look a little bit stupid. I have to, on all of this stuff. But yeah, it's a problem that they've got, because they've come out the gates with some big ideas and the detail isn't quite there, and that's allowed other people to jump on and kind of muddy the waters for them. So now they're playing a little bit of a kind of attack defense kind of thing, and it's a little odd actually.
To push on that, what big ideas would you say they've come out with?
Well, it's the whole kind of mass deportation, what do they call it, remigration thing. Well, it's this kind of thing, but to the extent to what they want to do it, I think that's what I'm driving at, and I just think that if you're going to come out with something that bold as the first thing you're going to do, get the details, get it solidly put together, and then roll it out to the public. Because unless you do, this is what happens.
I have to say, actually, I don't quite agree with you there, Peter B., because I have seen what Charlie has put on his Twitter. He has explicitly referred to being of Christian faith.
Yeah, I thought.
Oh, right, okay. I'm going to say, because in that particular interview I saw it, he did say values, but yeah.
No, he has.
Interview that one specific time and never again.
Yeah.
I have
I mean,
heard.
if you just if you hop onto Twitter at the moment, it's everywhere.
I mean, and I've heard, and of course, Peter B, you'll be aware of this as well. You work with the same production team that I do over in that studio, and from what I hear from the rumblings of in the interior, it has apparently been viewed as a quote car crash.
Yes, it has on all sides, though I will say.
I thought Alex
Somewhat of a
actually did
multi-car
quite
pilot.
well. I thought Alex
Yeah.
actually did quite well because she was just trying to get him up to answer a basic question, and he didn't really have a lot to say about it. But I've known Charlie. I was his mentor. I helped launch his career, and I can tell you that ever since he abandoned my mentorship and got in with certain crowds, he has become more and more and more rigid about what his view is as to, for example, what being British is. His bar is so low for any deviation from that, and that has happened in the past 3 years. It does not surprise me that he has ended up where he is. And I've watched it happen over time, and now here we are. I remember a speech he gave at, I think it was the New Culture Forum, I watched a clip of it, where he was saying there is a growing contingent of young people like me who believe as I believe. The reality is, there is actually a shrinking contingent of young people he's actually willing to bother associating with. That's why he thinks more people think like him. And I think that's a similar version of what people like Rupert Lowe have evolved their mentality into. There's no acceptance. I've said many times, if there was there's no such thing as disagreement, there'd be no such thing as politics. But the road to extremism is when you are unwilling to brook dissent. People accuse Nigel Farage of that often enough, but then you find this lot and you think, oh dear, they make them look like nice little puppies. Which I think is the point in lots of ways. It's like you can't get. It's that there's no version of extremism, as I would call it. There's no version of the rhetoric that is good enough unless it's right the way up there. And you see this in Rupert, you see it in Charlie, you see it in various other figures associated with them or have been associated with them, like Lewis Brackpool, like Connor Tomlinson, in some areas, Carl Benjamin, and they've all clumped together. What a surprise! Birds of a feather, flocking. And that's exactly what's happening here. I will say that at the moment, according to some polls, they're actually looking at splitting the right-wing vote by polling on about 10%. And they already have 13 councillors, which is not bad.
Yeah, so councillors true, but I do want to make the point about this poll. Just ignore it. You're told by just...
It was paid for by them.
Yeah, it was paid for by them. Find out now, say, do not compare this to other polls because the methodology is completely different. It's a prompting poll. The first question is, Rupert Lowe started a party. Would you vote for him? 10% of people say likely, yeah. Most people don't know him. And the people that do know him mostly don't want to vote for him. That's the real takeaway.
I'll chime in on that one, though.
Yeah.
The Reform have to be very careful, by the way, with that kind of they don't know him poll, because that's the advantage of Rupert Lowe at the moment, is he gets to write his own story, which is very rare in professional politics at this moment, and being a relatively unknown figure, because a lot of people know who Farage is. His unlikables are significantly higher than his likable factor. More people dislike him than like him. So the only reason the Reform seem to be driving very well at the moment is because of the issues, not the people. So this is the thing that when we get close to electoral calculus time, it's arguable that Nigel might be a bit of a drag on the ticket for Reform's success. But I will say that, I keep hearing this kind of, but nobody knows who he is. I would be very careful that a lot of people didn't know who a lot of other politicians were at one point, and they did a lot of damage in the to a lot of things.
I'd like to bring Simon in on this, but just before I do remember, and I will not mention names, but I was sat there in Portcullis House with a couple of journos, including one very senior one from a certain paper, and they were literally sat there going, "Oh, wow, we need some more story. We need to generate a story. We'll do a poll, as in like it'll be our own poll for that publication." And then, because it's one of those where they know who the audience are, they know what the answer is going to be like 97% yes, and then we'll do a story based on our own poll. And you're just like, how desperate are you getting?
I think we can all tell which newspaper they might have been from.
Yeah, that's what
We're not naming names. We're not naming names.
Name names. But
I think my 2 cents on this thing is there is about to be a very big sort of clash and difference between what all the sort of top man tweed types want and what Rupert Lowe actually is.
Yeah.
Which is, if you look at the details of his beliefs, he is an individualist sort of 80s hang and flog 'em Tory, as we have all seen on the Bird app, the film formerly known as Twitter.
He's basically
But
Farage.
he's very similar. He's two sides of the same coin. And then we've got Charlie, who wants to ban usury, which I think that's for a particular reason to do with his dislike of a certain group of people, allegedly, and condom, which I believe, the Lord Cities are basically socialists with some nationalist characteristics. These guys are not gonna vibe well with a effectively Thatcherite who has been reheated.
Yeah. Well, I want to mention one more thing, which it's always alluded to on things like Talk and GB News, but it's never said outright, and I don't understand why. Because the man's not Voldemort, but also they've got Steve Laws as a member who's been on. He's been on Spaces with what's it called, Young Bob, who's represented.
Steve's quite literally a member of like Patriotic Alternative, which is just about on the verge of prescription.
For those who don't know, he is he's probably the most bona fide person you can call a Nazi ever in Britain. Maybe not ever, but either way from that, he is sort of the remigration man. What he means by remigration is no people of foreign descent in Britain at all. He was on a space that Young Bob was hosting and basically said to a Jewish guy, half Jewish guy actually, he was half English as well, I don't care, your people wanted Israel, you can go off there, I don't care what we're doing here, like this is our country, you're not allowed here, even though the guy's half English. And Young Bob being there, and he literally said after that, well, maybe we can progress this further when it all went silent in that conversation. This is all attached to Restore now. And nobody seems to want to say the name Steve Laws, Zuma historian. These people that were in Homeland that was investigated by the Times, and they did quite a good job to kind of poke them on this remigration stuff. And it's like a mantra to them: remigration is inevitable. But sorry, people like their black friends and consider them British and don't want them deported. That's just the bottom of it.
I'm just going to say, I do agree with you 100% because I know Charlie refused to disavow extremist members on Talk. I think it was with Ian Collins today.
And that's
I thought that was actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I think this is all part of what I kind of see as the problem with the right in general is the way that we've argued recently has culminated in things like Restore and this kind of remigration argument. Because when you said somebody isn't a patriot, for having a slightly different opinion, when you've used real conservative as a kind of attack line, this is what happens. People start to have purity tests. We've done exactly what the left have done, where we can obsess over the minutiae rather than actually realizing we should all get together. It's rather crazy.
Yeah, I will move the conversation on in a second, but it was interesting. I was listening to you on the New Culture Forum, Peter, with I think it was Ben Habib, which, by the way, Advance is just dying in a ditch. We don't need to go into detail of that.
They've refused to merge. I don't know why.
It goes deeper than that, but I won't get into it now.
I'm actually doing the website for Nick Buckley, who is standing as the Advance candidate.
Okay, sorry for saying that.
Disclosure of interest.
Yeah, I don't mind mentioning that because it's obviously a matter of public record. He's standing. So.
Yes, quite. Sorry about that. But I can't remember who the other one was, Rafa. But they started talking in all this jargon, and he just said, "Can you just talk like normal people, please?"
Yeah, that's what.
Just talk like normal people.
Stop talking about dignity and values of the working classes. Stop it. You sound ridiculous. You sound utterly ridiculous, and it's like with. the way that the right talks about the working class now is the way that the left talk about minority groups. It's that kind of exaltation.
Yeah,
And it's like the red wall is now the holy land, and it's the religious and the deification of it all. I'm like, you don't see what you're doing, do you? And it's just exhausting. I'm kind of at the moment. I'm kind of a plague on all your houses.
No, I'm definitely the same. I'm definitely the same. But I suppose now we've had enough of a go at the right. How about we have a go at the left? How's Labour looking?
Oh yes.
Remember those?
Well, actually, to be fair, I saw a poll though that indicated they might just about squeeze through in Gorton and Denton.
It's
I don't know
possible.
how exactly that might happen.
Yeah.
I think the main reason it could happen is because they've been bribing voters with free food, as has been indicated by a recent X video. Yes, no, there's a hands up, it's a show support for Labour if you want to be fed. They're on a haul about 600, Bengalis and Indians and people like that. Absolutely mad.
Just incredible. But no, is it the new chief of staff? I can't remember who it is now.
Cabinet secretary.
Cabinet secretary, that was it. I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
Antonio Romeo.
Romeo.
I looked at her on that great source of all knowledge, Wikipedia. The thing is that for senior figures, they don't tend to get these details wrong because they'll be corrected within 4 hours if they do, because they've got media teams paying an eye on that. So I'm reading now. She was educated at North London Collegiate School, which is one of the top independent schools, and then Westminster School, which is another one.
Checks out.
And then she went to Oxford and did PPE.
Classic.
So,
hold on, I did that. Let's calm down.
But I mean, I'm just saying, painting a picture here. Now that's it. I don't judge her for doing what she's done, but at the same time, she is a classic career civil servant. Now she has led or helped to lead on the civil service end multiple government departments. She has a career within the civil service of something like a quarter of a century. But it is of no surprise to me that this is who Starmer picks, one of the bunch. But at the same time, what we don't really quite know is why her predecessor, Sir Christopher Warmold, was only in the job for like a year and a bit. That's very unusual for a cabinet secretary and the head of the Home Civil Service. So in the wake of the change of the chief of staff, the former chief of staff, Morgan Sweeney, and then the director of comms, Tim Allen, there's quite a shake-up going on in Downing Street at the moment, and this is clearly part of it. What we don't entirely understand is exactly why.
I'm going to say Chris Warmold, or whatever you pronounce it. I think I've heard about 20 different variations of his name pronunciation. And from what I understand, was actually not supposed to have any position. He was recommended against actually appointing him. Starmer was advised against appointing him because he wasn't very good, and he was considered as widely ineffective. So I was like, oh, he'll fit right in, part of the team. But and that seems to be why. But yet again, this is a classic case of Starmer being like either badly advised or not listening to advice and doing his own thing. So this woman seems to be quite well regarded. I have to admit, she was I think she was at the Foreign Office before this. And yes, even all political parties have said that she's rather good, which makes me think that she must be terrible. Because if everybody agrees, they're usually not very good.
Well, but she's also been subject to allegations of bullying in the past. Which
she's been subject to allegations of everything. Well, she was also doing expenses for allegedly, so.
That's true. I told you she fell right in.
It's one of those where, then again, look, I'm not going to say anything on this podcast, but I know what it's like to be accused unsubstantiatedly, which is a new adverb now, of
linguist, ladies and gentlemen.
Either I haven't done or have been taken massively out of context. So I'm one of those people who actually, takes quite a sympathetic view. I'm not going to take one of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I think those pretty well. Then again, I've just seen on the news he's been released under investigation just tonight. So I won't say anything about that.
Yeah, obligatory mention, really. Yeah.
Well, what I find quite funny is the way the BBC is so careful, which they should be.
Yes.
They should be
Yeah.
constantly referring to him as Andrew Mountbatten, which is his name, but they're not allowed to mention anything to do with princes. They're not allowed to do that. They also, and I understand this as an editor from an editorial standpoint, I remember the tragic and shocking murder of Jo Cox, MP, 10 years ago. And for a long time, I mean, the trial of her killer went through pretty quickly, but for quite a long time, in terms of the news cycle at least, we're always referring to her as killed MP Jo Cox, which sounds quite jarring in English anyway, from a point of view. Now, why were they doing that, though? Because from an editorial point of view, there had not yet been a trial or a conviction for murder, so they couldn't. I think the BBC, they couldn't say murder. When I appeared as a spokesman for a certain organisation, when the American activist Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck, I was very clear. I was on Talk, I was also on LBC, and I made it very clear that our stance on the matter was he was murdered. You know, we're not going to mince our words. He was also my friend. I had met him at a dinner about 6 years ago. So my task then was to go on live on the airwaves, as Peter Vinny you're very used to, and talk about the murder of my friend, which I did.
I had to do the same thing on that situation, and I actually got to the point where I said I'm not talking about it anymore because it started to feel like, you know, I did want it to be kind of put about that I was kind of about exploiting it. It was just like at some point we have to kind of draw a line under these things. But I will say, when it comes to how the media report a lot of things with Prince Andrew, I keep doing it. I do it all the time. I can't help but say it. That's around it. It's like with King Charles. It's King Prince Charles. Have you noticed? That's what a lot of people say. But yeah, they kind of. The doff capping and the little deference bits are still very prevalent in our society, I have to admit, and this makes me very concerned about how this is all going to play out. You know, there's already accusations of cover-ups and all the rest of it, but, you know, for the usual kind of thing. David Icke was having a, you know, celebratory party today, but it's a whole mess.
Broken clock strikes right once a day, you know.
Yeah, twice.
Yeah, I mean,
twice.
Twice.
Twice. I mean, David Icke, so I can only say once.
Diane Abbott made that mistake.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah,
but no, I have to admit, I think you're perfectly right, Patrick. The way that people, you know, tiptoe around it is right to a degree, but wrong as well. But I'm going to say, if they manage to make these charges stick, they're doing very well, I have to admit, because malfeasance in a public office is a very difficult charge to kind of bring and to kind of prove, because it's common law, it's not a statute. So
just on this point, I think if they've managed to chuck him in for malfeasance in public office, I think Peter's next. Not you, Peter. Peter Mandelson.
Which one? There's two of us.
Which one?
Mandelson, yeah. No,
I think Mandelson's next. I mean, he was passing about the 2008 bailout to Epstein before. Like, he was basically, allegedly, some might say, in Minecraft insider trading. So
yeah. Can I just kind of second to point out the legal difference? Well, I'm not actually going to go into it, but there is a difference between malfeasance and misfeasance in public office. And I think, looking at certain news reports, I think they might have confused them. The BBC today was simply saying misconduct, I think, because they are confused about it.
Yeah.
Misfeasance accidental, malfeasance is not accidental. I'm guessing it's something like that.
But I think with Peter Mandelson, I think it's a little bit more cut and dry because of the positions that he held, and were more formal positions rather than, you know, the kind of special advisor to the trade envoy kind of long title that, you know, didn't really mean very much. I think this is the complexity that they're going to have to. I really hope that they've got this right, because I tell you now, if he gets off on a technicality, this country is going to blow a gasket. I really.
The only person that would get off on a technicality after this is Peter Mandelson.
Yes, I've said the exact same thing. I said it today. I said, if anything is going to happen, is he's going to get off scot-free because he's Peter Mandelson.
Well, he was known as the Prince of Darkness now, wasn't he? But
Yeah, the
He'll-
Teflon Prince of Darkness.
We've all had 13 Horcruxes. Peter Mandelson, I think, has about 7.
Imagine if he ends up in a reform cabinet after this as well. That's
Don't put that out there. Don't put that out in the universe.
it's clown decade.
Clown decade. Peter Mandelson, Secretary for Corruption. It's like
Well, they've got an opening for Foreign Secretary.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Well, while we're on the subject of let's face it, Labour's slow motion car crash. We also have the news of the local elections, don't we? Because they had to completely U-turn on that, which in our little portfolio of things we were going to go through, we didn't actually mention, but I think it's worth mentioning just because it is a massive win for reform, but more importantly, it's another massive embarrassment, humiliation even for Labour, because you've got Mr. Human Rights Lawyer as PM being told by everyone, yes, this is perfectly legal, this is perfectly within the law, and he's been beaten on legal technicality by, of all people, Nigel Farage and his team, which does go to show the I've heard rumours that they basically have KCs working for them for free. That's probably true.
Yeah, I actually think that's true. Actually, yeah, I wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, well, there you go. You know it's true. But on top of that, sorry, just to say as well, the Tories have kind of, again, we all forget about the Tories, but they do still exist. They tried to, and the Lib Dems did this as well, they tried to say they fought tooth and nail against this, but then you've got Tory and Lib Dem councillors saying it would like to postpone them, sorry.
Well, in their defence, the vast majority of councils which have now been unpostponed are Labour controlled.
They are, it's worth saying that. 21 of them are
phenomenally disastrous. Yeah. It's going to be phenomenally
but
disastrous.
My question is, why is the local government minister still in their job? Why is Keir Starmer still in their job? I mean, this is embarrassing beyond belief. This is also a lot of public money has been spent on the legal side of this, and who's being held accountable? I know we don't really do that in Britain in 2026, but we could give it a go just once. Somebody could actually get fired for something. I know stranger things have happened. I mean, there was a Labour advisor who was interviewed on the news the day when they did the U-turn, and he was saying that somehow Reform have to give the money that they get back in terms of legal fees to charity, and somehow it was Reform's fault. I was like, you people are just idiots at this point. You really have no idea how to combat Reform at all, and they're just coming out with whatever. The fact they were trying to blame Reform for this was just astounding to me. I mean, that's how low they've got.
I did see a lot of that.
Decade, bingo. Peter B defends Reform. There we go.
Next year we should make a bingo card. Absolutely, we should make a bingo card next year. But
well, next year you might need to make it a drinking game, mate.
I'm bad enough with the wine I've got at the moment. Yeah, quite. Because I did see a lot of people saying that, you're losing tax money because Reform put elections back on, and Reform can just say we're on the side of democracy. Stop calling us fascists, whatever. It's how do you expect to win that? I don't know, but everyone's on the side at the moment.
To bring it back to the story, all the government really should be forced to do now is release the legal advice. Release what actual advice they got given, the original, and then the revised mystery advice, as I like to call it. Here's what you could have won, and with the public could see then what the advice they were following, and the fact they won't do that, I think, tells you very clearly that there was no advice originally, and they thought they could win it hands down. Does that say everything?
To get us back to our our timetable, Chagos as well, they have that issue because that's obviously Donald Trump's come out with a lot. The best poster in the world when he had 140 characters, he's turned into it looks like ChatGPT of a madman now when he types. But the point of his not tweet, his Truth Social post was, don't give away Diego Garcia. So he seems to have 180'd on that again. But that's also come under a bit of, I don't know how much necessary legal pressure there is here, but effectively there's parliamentary record of a contradiction with Labour's position. Which just it seems to be madness. To clarify this, the position I believe is they would Labour said for national defence interest reasons we have to give away Diego Garcia because of a decision that a judicial review of the UN will partake on us, that basically we can't use the military base But then later on, I think I can't remember who it was. One of the Tory lords asked in Parliament, can you clarify Article? I think it was 298 of the particular UN convention. Oh yeah, that was re-clarified in 2020. We're still on board with that, and part of that article is we can't get involved with military operations. So basically, it looks like they've lied to Parliament. So we need clarification on that. I'm afraid. I should mention at this point, sorry, Simon has just dropped out. He has other commitments, but we will carry on for another 20 minutes or so. So there we go.
Of course, but
you see, there we are. We have this with Trump's very strident statement. It's almost as though he's ordering Sir Keir Starmer, who I don't think most of us are large fans of, but he is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and he's now being told, this is a bad idea, you shouldn't be doing this, and this is happening on the world stage. This is not great for our international reputation either, and it's very much, I think, a case of, we don't yet know, because the Parliament's not sitting at the moment, is it? So we don't know how the government is going to respond to that. I can't actually see it being very likely that they will change their position, but what they do now know is that they will just look silly on the world stage. I am coming to the conclusion that Starmer's entered that point, and there's been lots of articles about this in places like the Telegraph, exactly where you'd expect them to be. He's entered that point of a premiership where it's just kind of like a bit like Rishi towards the end. It's just like, whatever. I don't think he thinks he's going to get re-elected. I don't think he thought he was going to get elected. Well, not when he took the job of Loto anyway. But now I'll be very interested to see how Yvette Cooper ultimately handles this one as well.
Terribly.
I think nobody knows really what to do. But
who she is, where she's gone.
I think it's one of those where people forget that she's Ed Balls' wife.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot.
Now this is 11 years old stuff, isn't it? But I think it's one of those where I wonder whether the government strategy will simply be to hope that Donald Trump changes his mind again in the next couple of weeks, because that seems probably like the best strategy.
Well, it's the only strategy they've got, but the problem is, as the kind of ramping up of Iran situation kind of looms very large, Diego Garcia is going to be back in play, very, very big. And I mean, a lot of this is rather academic at this point now, because one of his comments was, you could do whatever you want, but we're just going to take the base militarily if we think it's under threat. So basically, this is the American kind of hard power situation, which Trump threw at the moment. The problem with the situation with why we've got this with Chagos is the fact that the court case that Mauritius kept bringing against the UK was getting astronomical in terms of the cost of it. So this was actually into kind of debate with where the Conservatives brought this up, basically as a way of stopping the court cases, not giving away the territory. But yeah, the flip-flop, I know a lot of people have always asked about, like, why has he changed his opinion? It's because there's actually another island in the same archipelago that you can use, that they could really kind of put another base there. But that kind of got rather rattled out of the options list after they realized that it's just the capabilities and the differences are, whilst minute in terms of military kind of capabilities, are significant. So that's one of the reasons that he had to kind of switch his opinion back. And then it's, when you actually looked at it, it's not just kind of into the Middle East, it's the fact that the Diego Garcia is a perfect launch base the other way into Indo-Pacific region, which is going to be the next major theatre for geopolitical affairs. The South China Sea and everything happening around there is going to be what we should be talking about for what realistically the next 10 years, I imagine. But yeah, this Chagos deal is absolutely ridiculous. I know there was a story about how Starmer wobbled, according to Peter Mandelson, and it had to be convinced back by Lord Hermer, Jonathan Powell. And so it's like the two sirens at the left, they're teasing him back into the deal. I was like, well, if two people are in favor of something, you should be definitely against it if it's those two. But yeah, I have to admit, this stinks to high heaven. And Yeah, there's something else at play here. That has to be, because the idea of just giving it away and then paying to give it away as well. That's the bit I don't get. Why are we paying to give it away?
So my perspective on this, I don't know if you've ever seen the clip. I've got it somewhere on my PC and I post it to Twitter all the time. There's a clip of Philippe Sands, who represented Mauritius at the UN for the original ICJ ruling. Effectively, he said in this clip, Britain is a great place because it's the only place where you can go on the world stage, represent a country against your country's own interests, and then come back to Britain and everyone applauds you. Who he means by everyone is everyone he knows. That's people, frankly, like Starmer and his other friends, who effectively all they're really congratulating is well done for your doing your job well as an international lawyer, which they all are, either human rights or international lawyers, whatever. You might be asking why they're doing this. It's simple. They absolutely love international law and think it should supersede everything. So because this international ruling, they see it almost as the word of God, which I should know about. I went to Ash Wednesday Mass yesterday, so which is, you know, no offence, Peter Barnes. This is about as evangelical as I get, but this is why I think religion's actually quite important, because then there is actually something that supersedes all this. But most people don't believe that. That's fine. But this is why they're paying for the pleasure of this, because they genuinely believe it's the right thing to do. They think it's a complete moral plane that they are on, and that they think they are going through with. Whereas everyone else, you know, in focus groups, I think whenever this comes up, they're asked, why are we doing this? Oh, it's for it's for our national security interest, and nobody believes them because it doesn't make sense.
My mother said this about the New Labour years. She has a habit of referring to Haryan, famous architect of the Equalities Act of 2010, as Harriet Harperson. Yeah. But she also said of her and of people like Blair and all the rest of them, Patricia Hewitt as well, people like that, is that they just thought they were so right that nobody could disagree with them, and this is where you get those kinds of politics from. Starmer is cut from the same cloth, is of the same ilk, and these are people who basically, they can't understand you if you disagree with them. And the thing is, that's actually true. They can't, genuinely, you almost want to, refer them to somebody, because they do not have the capacity anymore, if they ever did, to understand that other people might have different opinions. Now, this harks back to one of our earlier topics on the right and Restore Britain, people like Charlie and Connor and those kinds of people, because they are the same.
Exactly the same.
Wrong. So which shows that it's not an issue, as Charlie is fond of saying these days, it's not an issue of right and left. Well, he's right. It's an issue of ideology and extremism, which can happen either way. But it's when you've lost your ability to believe that anyone who thinks any differently from you could possibly be right. This is what happens.
Yeah, I actually agree. I also think it's the fact that people like Charlie and Harry Harmans and the Blairs and all these people in the world, is that they think that their politics makes them a better person. So that's the thing, is that they when you disagree with them, it's because you're a bad person, you're pursuing an ill, something bad, so therefore you shouldn't be listened to, or you should be castigated. They attack you and not the argument. And I think we see, I guess, the same on the woke right as it is on the woke left, that this kind of moral purity and this kind of moral crusade, everything is built up and ratcheted up as like the most important thing ever. And realistically, most people would just want decent services, low taxes, and a safe and secure streets and nation. I think that's the thing. And the more people indulge in the ideology kind of aspect of this, it's actually going to make things worse in terms of actually getting anything done, because you're going to get to that point where nobody will compromise. And that's what our entire system is based on: compromising, working together. It's defined by that. That's why parliamentary democracies work significantly better than presidential systems, because it's about bringing people together. And unfortunately, the way we're doing our politics is just idiotic. And Yeah.
I,
Oh, by the way, Harriet Harkperson is a great name, by the way.
yeah, I've never heard that one before. Actually, I have to
No,
say.
no, I think it's her own invention, but
I mean,
it is symbolic of her. But I think what those people have forgotten, if they ever knew it, is that some people are actually indifferent to difference. And the thing is, when he was under my wing, I've said this, well, probably haven't said this publicly before, but when you drive a car, you have at least an accelerator and a brake. And I accelerated his development massively, but in subtle ways that I think he wouldn't have known about because he was too young. I was also applying the brakes. And now there is nobody left to apply those brakes. And this is then what we see. In some of the ways, this was also true of New Labour's ideological drive. There was nobody left because they always had those youth majorities to apply the brakes. Contrast, of course, with today. Starmer is finding the brakes applied to him, whether he's got a massive majority or not. And you may indeed find, no secret that Peter S. is a major reform person, but they may find the same if they get in.
Well, I happen to agree with you there.
I will say, I mean, Farage's ideals, I think, are not particularly close to where reform are at the moment, if you know what I mean. I mean, we're talking about Farage, a man who said that Liz Truss's budget was very good, which, when he was asked about that today, not today, because it was announced on Tuesday, so 4 days ago, that time of recording being put out, he was asked by Camilla Tomley, I think it was, of the Daily Tea, you defended Liz Truss, but you're quite happy for Jenrick to denigrate her, basically. And he's basically got the same problem I have with that budget, which is, I didn't realise at the time we had the biggest increase in spending ever in that budget, because no one talked about that. And that's basically my problem with it as well. But, with what Robert Jenrick's going to do, I don't think you're going to see full-on Farageism, but I think Farage understands that you need to build the political capital. How do you do that? Well, everyone hates us on economics at the moment, so we may as well just basically have Mel Stride as Shadow Chancellor. Sorry, Treasury spokesperson.
Treasury spokesman.
Yeah. So
no, I do find it when it comes to what Jenrick announced, though, it was interesting about the OBR. Because that was quite the kind of
that is a 180.
Because Tyson said it was terrible, Farage said it had to go, and now they're keeping it. I mean, there's definitely the kind of realpolitik kicks in, between the difference between campaigning and governing. But I mean, that's quite the doozy, because this is what they keep falling over. There's always a tweet. They've always said something that keeps cropping back up, like this lot. And I have to admit, it's entertaining. I think it's going to become a bit of a problem if this starts to be the pattern. Is you said one thing, now you're saying a different thing because you've got closer to power. And I think all parties have to be more responsible when they're in opposition about what they're willing to kind of offer, because the last general election, Reform were talking about massive tax cuts. They've dropped them now, but the argument was dominated about why weren't the Conservatives offering tax cuts. It was used purely to push the narrative, not that it was good for the country. And I think all political parties have to be better at that. We have to grow up a little bit, and I think maybe being more sensible on what we're going to offer at elections might be a decent start.
I mean,
Patrick.
Starmer was elected as Labour leader, not Prime Minister, as Labour leader, off the back of 10 pledges, which he's basically abandoned. So it's one of those, actually, and I'm sure it's probably like the third or fourth time I've said this on this show, is that which it was that Giles Brandreth said on Have I Got News for You. Peter S. knows what's coming. He said, this is the mistake that politicians make, saying anything at all. And then it's minimizing your attack surface, that kind of thing. So yes, indeed, this is why the Wolves puts its own stuff out there, but I don't say much because I may run again, and etc. 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 But just coming back to the mini budget briefly, and then I think we need to move on. But it was Wolves that pointed out, we had a nice little graph, that it was not in fact the Liz Truss mini budget that crashed the pound. In fact, what happened on the same day it was announced was a US Forex event where the whole market kind of sold itself off.
Yeah.
And on that same day, not only did the pound fall against the dollar, but so did the Canadian dollar, so did the Japanese yen, so did the euro, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the kind of independent reporting that we do, that we will actually look at the detail. I was actually sent it by a trader friend of mine who noticed this and put that forward to us, and we published it. But we were the only media outlet of any kind that was saying any such thing, and we put the graph up. It's out there. You know, you've got all these countries, and now did all of these countries, look at the euro, I mean, the Eurozone is 19 countries. Did all of these countries suddenly announce a rather conservative mini budget on the 23rd of September? No, they did not. So, you know, these are the things, the details that people conveniently like to forget, but we don't.
No, I think you're quite right, and I have to say, I mean, on my channel, I think I called myself Liz Truss's #1 acolyte or something at one point, because I was so defensive of her. I'm not anymore because she's turned into a mentalist almost. No offense to her, but she's running her own channel, and Peter B's nodding. I'll put it that way.
I didn't say anything.
But I mean, before we get on to the last topic, there's one more thing I want to say, because Restore was obviously brought up before and about ideological purity. One thing I keep noticing is that they keep mentioning they really want to ban halal and kosher, and I don't know how much of a priority that is for people. I've never heard anyone in real life talk about that.
I'll chime in on this.
Yeah.
I was asked to talk about this on a debate, and I made that exact point. I was like, do people care? My God, the phone messages, the texts, the WhatsApp, everything came in. This was absolutely massive to people. I was like, you're about 15 years too late to actually get this, you know, achieved, you know, for people to care. But I'm always surprised with this one, because I'm like, do people actually care? But the country actually has a real problem with this one.
I mean, one thing I'll say on it, just for some statistics, so 80% of halal slaughter is actually stunned. It is stunned. It's humane, if we want to put it that way. None of kosher is. And I don't really care. I really don't care how my meat gets to my plate, I'm afraid to say. And yes, I have seen how slaughterhouses work. It's grim. Of course it's grim. You're killing things. What do you expect? So I find it really odd in that sense. But they're really pushing for it. But one part of it I always pick up on is they always say, oh, it's very un-Christian, this. And all I think is, when do you think we started stunning meat? Sorry, not meat, but you know, the animals to get the meat. Because it's actually quite a recent development. We used to just slit their throat in the field, I'm afraid to say. That's life. That's how you get your meat to the plate. You know, there's a place where I grew up called Goose Green. They didn't have things to shock them with. They didn't knock them out with gas. They just chopped their head off on a chopping block. And that only ended in the 80s, really. So to be blunt about what I'm saying here, again, this is very un-Christian. They're trying to go on this Christian nationalist thing, and I just see it as a big sort of, this is the PC way of being almost ethno-nationalist. Everyone's using the term now. But they are trying to be PC with that. Which I don't get anyway, but for different reasons. But we'll go into more interesting things now, like cream.
I think what I would say on that score is that if I'm drunk enough to want a kebab, I really don't care where it comes from.
It's mixed up. You're going to
no
be
meat
shocked.
comes in solid cylindrical blocks. That's all you have to remember. No meat comes like that. It's not from an animal like that.
And also, just because we have touched on the Christianity theme several times. Well, I would say in terms of what Charlie did to me, rejecting me, abandoning me, betraying me, deceiving me after everything I'd done for him, he is no Christian.
Well, I've said it in a lot of private chats, but I'm also happy to say this publicly. I don't believe they go to church regularly. I don't. I mean, I'll put my hands up. I miss days of obligation, but I don't believe they go at all. Maybe for Easter to get a picture, and that's it. I don't believe it, frankly, because for the main reason, by the way, just to throw this out, then we can move on to Greenland. A lot of Catholic parishioners are left wing.
Yeah.
So there we go. Go on, Patrick.
Greenland,
yes.
Yeah, now we're back on the Restore thing. So my main pitch here is to say, because you've got all these people, it could be Bertie, it could be Charlie, it could be Colin, all these people. oh, we want mass deportations. They've not answered the question of where are you going to put them? Because there's no point in saying, oh, we'll send them back to France. No, France will send them back again. Oh, we'll send them back to their own homelands. Well, that's assuming they haven't thrown their identity documents overboard, so we actually do know where they come from, and there's no guarantee they will accept them back either. What I personally think, as a linguist, translator, and occasionally interpreters, we have more interpreters at the border force, so that you can actually check whether the language they're speaking corresponds to what it says, where they say they're from. So that's one thing. But my plan, and I hate to riff on Donald Trump, but I will, is to use Greenland. Now,
spicy.
Mr. Trump, he wants the exclusive, guys. You heard it here first. You know, his plan is to use bits on the western end, the closer end to them of the island. It's a massive ice sheet in the middle, you know, for strategic forward defense bases, etc. Leasing bits of it. He wanted to buy up the whole thing. He's been persuaded out of that, I think. But, you know, leasing strategic bits of it. Now, the main bulk of the population, it is the world's largest island and also the world's least populated country, continent, whatever you want to call it. There's only 50,000 people there. They're all in the southwest. The capital, Nuuk, is where most of them live. Most of them are Inuit. There are some Danish citizens. It is, of course, the property of the Kingdom of Denmark. My suggestion, given that there are also some habitable bits on the eastern or northeastern end of the island, which is obviously closer to us, chuck them there. And the idea of that be, well, obviously you'd have to talk to Denmark, but I think they'd be far more willing to talk to us than they would be, you know, happy with the US, because, you know, we have a far closer history. Can't just mention the word Danelaw. But you know, my point being, the thing is, they have it, and obviously that history of sovereignty should be respected, but they don't really do a lot with it. They're too far away from it. So I would make an initial financial outlay to establish, call them what you want, camps, barracks, housing, you know, processing facilities of whatever description, and if they come here illegally, they get chucked over there.
Mm-hmm.
And if they won't cooperate, there's a massive ice sheet that they can, I don't want to say die in, but can be exposed to. The conditions are quite harsh. And that's what I mean when I say deterrent. What I'm saying is you are going to go somewhere that's a lot less nice, as much as our weather has been unseasonably cold in the past couple of months in this country. But if you want a deterrent, there's a lot of space. It's much closer to us than Rwanda ever was. And if we can get Denmark to agree, then I would just chuck them over there. A lot less expensive for flights and warships, you know, that kind of thing as well. And given the Prime Minister under pressure at the moment, and there has been the exclusive story in the Mail today about all the Joint Chiefs of Staff coming out and saying we need to sign a letter written by an influential person to say we need to up military spending. Like, fine, do this. Stop spending millions a day housing them, giving them benefits, feeding them, and chuck them over there, and then use the money we save from that to boost our defence spending, which we're going to need, as all the Joint Chiefs of Staff are saying at the moment in respect of, e.g., Russia. So that is basically my plan.
Well, I will say this. Zia Yusuf, I know you follow me on Twitter now. I'm clipping this and putting it on YouTube. There's your plan. Boom.
Yeah.
Go on.
I'm going to say I've written about Greenland and as to why Trump is actually after it, because it's not a new thing. The US have been after securing Greenland for quite some time. I think Truman offered 100 million in gold at one point, and I think just after the Alaska Purchase, I think they were going for Greenland then as well. So it's not a new thing. The reality is it's basically because the Arctic corridor has become actually usable now because of the melting ice caps and all that stuff. It's actually going to cut shipping time down by about half. So usually it takes about 40 days between China to say somewhere like the UK, or through that corridor, it takes 20 days. That's why everything has suddenly changed so rapidly and it's changed so fast, is because that's what's gone from an odd little bit on the map. It's now usable land, it's usable kind of throughways. And that's really what they're after securing. And it's also the fact that, the GUIC, which is the Greenland, UK, and Iceland corridor, the bit of the North Atlantic which actually matters, is it's basically where all the Russian submarines are. We need to know who's in the water. When you had the great and huge armada, the Greenland was actually pivotal in terms of its kind of sensor outlays, in terms of being able to make sure that the armada was able to cross the Atlantic with relative ease. So the idea that it's just some kind of land grab, which has annoyed me no end in the media, it's just Trump, orange man, bad takes. It's just irritating as hell. But my thing with where to put the migrants is the Ascension Islands, because the ECHR does not apply on the Ascension Islands. So you can put them there, they can send them back wherever you want.
Well, yeah,
because of a funny little bit of law, and the fact that nobody put the Ascension Islands in the kind of description, I think it doesn't count. It's like a peace treaty with Russia, I think, just after the Cold War, or something like a demilitarized escalation thing. I forgot to mention, I think it was the Kingdom of Fife. So they said it was so they had to kind of reattach it as a separate bit, so that Russia wasn't at war with Fife.
Yeah, okay, just a couple of points there on that one. I mean, the thing is, I think I remember the Ascension Islands being mooted by the former Conservative administration, by the Home Office at some point. It didn't seem to go anywhere. But yes, I mean, this is the other thing. It could be a dual purpose thing. One, we stick the migrants there. Two, we also do a Trump and establish our own forward defence bases, just pointing in the other direction, essentially. But the other thing that occurred to me about 5 in the morning was, I mean, it could even become the next Australia. Not in terms of climate, but the reason I say that is that we sent our largely petty criminals over there to get rid of them, and look what they've done with the place.
Yes, look what they've done with the place.
well,
there's a demographic question these days with that. I'd argue, but
true,
I don't.
But I mean, it's like you see what I'm saying. It's like they might even build a society of their own. Yeah. It's not exactly the idea, but we sent our Puritans over to the United States.
Yeah. Oh, well,
look what they've done with the place.
So it'll be interesting with the modern UK, as they call it, to establish a state there. I will say it's worth having Greenland, because when I did my geology degree, you find out it's absolutely filled to the brim with rare earth minerals that are just not accessible because of 20 kilometers of ice. That's a bit of an exaggeration. It's more like 200 meters.
It's also to do with its kind of geometry placing, because it's one of the direct links to the major satellite networks. That's one of the reasons that it's so important, because if you look at the Ukraine war, it's technically the first war ever fought in space in terms of the reliance on the overhead apparatus, rather than the kind of on-ground artillery things, because you have radio signals and all this kind of thing. So that is why Greenland is so important. Like I said, it has annoyed me to the ridiculous level that it probably should have, that just people keep saying, oh, it's Trump, it's just a land grab, it's egoism, it's all this kind of stuff. It's like, do you want the lights to turn on or not? Because unfortunately, it's that level of brass tacks that we're dealing with. But and all of this is, when you look at Venezuela, you look at Chagos, you look at Greenland, or the stuff at Davos and this border peace, all of it is linked together. It's not 4D chess, it's statecraft. But we've become so kind of immune to a government actually being able to do something. We've confused it for witchcraft. It's crazy.
So, and that's also another point, isn't it? Really, that to bring it back to the restore point, is what we were saying politically, was that all of these people, Rupert Lowe, Charlie Downs, all of these other people are saying mass deportations, remigration. They do not have any idea where to put them, unless you want to stand them up against a wall and shoot them. Which, for the sake of clarity, I do not advocate.
Thank God.
Where are you actually going to put them? And it makes a lot more sense than Miranda to do this.
Yeah, well,
I meant to say. Sorry, go on, Peter.
Well, I was just going to say, this is why I'm so defensive of Operation Restoring Justice from Reform, because there is thought put into that. Whereas with remigration, you know, the Steve Laws type, which let's just be realistic here. That is what they're flashing a bit of ankle to the people that want every foreigner deported, whether or descendant of foreigner. Which being real, there's barely anyone that actually wants that. This is what annoys me when they say, "Oh, it's not just an online phenomenon. We've got counsellors." Yeah, sure. Do they know what's going on underneath the team that Lowe has put around it? Because the person I feel most bad for here
does Lowe understand the team that he's got around him? That's the bigger question.
Well, this is my point. I feel really bad for the guy. I don't particularly appreciate his whole anti-reform agenda. I can understand it on a personal level. Don't get me wrong, but he has a whole bunch of people below him who are flashing ankle to these people, and he's clearly not aware of any of it, because I caught the first 10 minutes, and I'm probably going to do a video on this tomorrow, or, you know, hours ago for people who are listening to it. But I caught the first 10 minutes of his interview on the Lotus Eaters, and he just went off on a sort of neo-Thatcherite rant, which I'm like, yeah, I do appreciate all this, and I do think this is all great, but I know the people below you to an extent, and I know who they're flashing ankle to, and I don't trust any of it, because I know these people, because they've been in my replies for the last 6 days.
Yeah.
I've had to mute half of my threads on Twitter because they're everywhere, which is fine. I'm not bothered,
are. Same. I've had the same trouble. Yeah.
So, sorry, to finish off, I feel bad for Rupert Lowe, because he doesn't realise this, but if he doesn't want to disavow the people around him, because he genuinely likes them on a personal level, which is fine. But if he doesn't disavow them, he's going to be kicked out of clubs. He's going to be basically cancelled. And I don't know if he's ready for that necessarily. Which, if it does happen, he'll think, oh, people don't want neo-Thatcherism. Well, reform's neo-Thatcherism.
So, well, see, this is the point that Alex Phillips was trying to make.
To an extent, Peter,
is how exactly are you different? From them, you know.
And they can't be open about how they're different, because how they are different is outside of the Overton window. And they know, and they realise they can't push it now, which is really funny.
Say, the Overton window is the most overused phrase in British politics at the moment. Oh, I hate the phrase. Oh, it's ridiculous. Also, people have to realise that a window, if you want to call it that way, it moves. It can move one way and it can move back. You know, this idea that it's suddenly so far out there that Tommy Robinson is going to walk into the House of Commons. You're living in a fantasy land, an absolute fantasy land. It's preposterous. But I will say that I do think, like I said, that Reform have got this problem, is that they rather let the dogs off the leash. They opened the door to a lot of this when they started with some of the narratives that they started putting out there were just to take down the Conservatives, that they kind of built everybody up and ratcheted everything up to 11. And now they suddenly might have, you know, be bit, maybe not massively, maybe they won't take them down by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a problem that they really could do without right now. And I think that's the bigger thing. It's not that they're going to be massive. I think it's just like a yappy dog. That's what they are.
I think, Peter, the only sense in which the word back implies to restore is to migrants.
Another point I want to make is that I would not be shocked if Reform UK's headquarters are popping champagne at the moment, because ultimately what is Rupert Lowe's entire Restore Britain doing at the moment? It's getting all the crazy people around him, to be frank. All the people that Reform will not want are going there. It's basically doing the vetting for them. They're going to love that. But that's easier on them.
It's like I said, though, they don't have to win. That's the thing. If they don't have to get elected to be a problem. You know, that base is very fractured. It's very delicate, and there's still a lot of unease with what Nigel's ploughing ahead with. He's right to plough ahead with it. I'm not disagreeing with what he's doing, but it's somewhat taking the base for granted, and I think that is a very dangerous thing when people have got their emotions and politics mixed together.
There's a possibility of that. I mean, I said it before we started the stream, but I when I did my big video on Restore, I knew Steve Laws would get massively involved, and he is. Who would have thought? But I gave them about a year, and as the week's gone on, what is anyone talking about when it comes to Restore? It's this whole thing of who you're actually going to deport. What do you think citizens should be? Who should it apply to? And at the moment, people think you have to be Christian, which in and of itself is just ridiculous, because, as you say, according to this sort of thing, Peter Barnes, you're not British.
No, I mean, I've been called a lot worse.
Technically, what Charlie actually said was, "You are less British."
He did. I'll push back on that. Going through the whole interview, he started off with saying, you do have to be Christian. But then when Alex pushed back on him, it was a case of he started rolling it back because he realised, I'm showing my power level too much for lack of a better term there. So he's gone to
like a true gamer.
Well, quite. So he's gone to a sort of safe level there. He's trying to push the Everton window, but all they've actually ended up finding out is that Reform are pretty much at the right edge of it.
Well, as I think I also said in pre-broadcast, was that what people like him want is to live in a world full of clones of themselves.
Yeah.
Because their bar is so low. For any kind of toleration of deviance, and that's essentially the phenomenon that you're seeing here. It's worth mentioning Peter Barnes has had to bow out.
But we won't be mentioning it, yeah.
And then there were two. But I think it's going to be a feature of this podcast, I'm being honest, every so often, but it's not easy to get four people's schedules aligned, is it?
Well, there's that, and then also, a pub. Come on, this is what happens.
People do, and maybe they've not even paid for the next round. So there we go. You see, but yeah, I think we probably nipped all the way around our topics.
Definitely, yeah. But
we've got, like I say, I would end just on saying, the whole restore thing. My dad used to keep fish tanks, even at a pond. And one thing you have got in a fish tank, if you don't want them to all die, is a filter. And and I actually agree with Peter B's point that, or was it yours? One of them. They're basically they're getting their filtering done for them, and of course this is not the only avenue. That was yours. Okay, sorry. Yes, that was yours. But that's not the only avenue. There's advance as well, but there's heritage.
Well, there is heritage. I mean, I teased before, and I suppose we've got another 15 minutes or so, so I may as well go through that. I mean, advance has died in a ditch. Sorry to say that. I know you have made Nick Buckley's website, but I suppose I should go into a bit of news of that. So this was all put on Richard Taylor's channel on YouTube. He was head of Wales. And I always describe it as he basically got Sergeant Angel'd in Hot Fuzz. He was too good for London office, according to him. I obviously have a bit of insight here because I go to my Reform branch pretty much monthly. I missed a few, obviously. But advance has come up a couple of times because people who go out to protest and things like that, they see advance flags, they hear people talk about advance, and they start to get a bit worried. And I basically say, well, this is a bit of an online phenomenon, I don't know about that. But in Wales, it was different. Richard Taylor, who lives in the south of Wales, drove all the way around Wales, basically trying to pick up momentum. And he must have done an excellent job for it to have even got on my radar in real life. I know it's with politically engaged people in Reform. So he's doing a very good job. But long story short, he was cut off from Nation Builder, from the database that they had. He was told, stop being so good at this because you're embarrassing the rest of the country. And eventually he was not quite kicked out. He said he left for personal reasons, but there was too much tension between him and head office, and now he's going his own way, saying everyone should vote Reform because advance aren't going to get anywhere. On top of that, a load of people have resigned from the college, which for people who don't know, the Advanced College was supposed to be this innovative thing where the membership's one thing, but the college is supposed to be the elite of the party that choose leaders, choose the board, and hold them to account. That went from something of, I don't think it was quite 100 people, but you're talking about dozens of people. Now it's down to a dozen. There has been a mass exodus of people who've left there. He asked on a live as well, Ben Habib, to Ayan Hirsi Ali, who's an American and Dutch citizen of Somali descent. Would you like to be an advisor? She said yes, and as far as I can tell, nothing's come from that. Advance is dead in the water because nobody's really involved, and the people that are involved are very, very angry at Restore and Rupert Lowe because he's launched this thing, he's not willing to merge with them, and it's basically made the whole thing pointless because they made this as a sort of platform to almost idolise Rupert Lowe. Ben Habib would say every week, yes, we want Rupert Lowe to be leader, because Ben Habib never really wants to be leader. That's reading between the lines from me anyway. And so now what's the point of it? Well, you've got Nick Buckley in Denton, obviously. How much of the vote he's going to get, I don't know. Nobody's talked about him. I can't imagine it's much more than 1 or 2%. And from there, they've got a few councillors from Reform as well. What's going to happen to them, I'm not sure, but I can't see the whole thing lasting too much longer, because a lot of people are disgruntled, as they've said on YouTube channels. I think Paul Burgess he's called, Climate Skeptic. He's done his own half-hour video on the whole thing, and just the college was basically supposed to be policy making as well, but he's an expert on the climate crisis and how it's nonsense, and he was told, well, yeah, you can put these ideas out, but they're not going to be policy. There's a whole mishmash of things. It's a whole drama that's happened in advance. And we're at this point and nobody really knows what it is. I mean, from your perspective, you won't know any of that.
No, but what I can tell you is that when Nick, it's not a public record, so there's nothing wrong with saying it, I don't think. When he ran at first, he was with Reform at first, as you know.
Yes.
And then he ran as an independent for Mayor of Greater Manchester.
Yeah.
Then he ran for Parliament, and I repurposed the same website for that objective. I did those pro bono. This time, I'm actually getting paid. Clearly will not reveal the amount. It's not much. It's in 3 figures. But interestingly, for a party that, as you say, you allege is collapsing, this is the first time I've worked for him and actually got paid for it. Because he's got a budget. So somebody is still funding something.
So what I reckon that is, what's it got? Ben Habib promised, I think it was 100,000 of his own pounds toward the party, and that was after he got to 30,000 members. He's claiming it's over 40,000 at this point. I don't know how true that is, and I was very skeptical when he claimed he reached 30,000, because every time he was asked this on interviews, whatever number he said, and he was pushed on it, he'd say, oh, that's the number I'm on our mailing list. And then there'd be a number that's about 2/3 of the way toward that number, that's the actual paid up members. So I wouldn't be shocked if the actual membership's around 20-odd thousand, but he definitely put that 100,000 in. And then obviously, I think a lot of this money's gone into this by-election to try and get their name on the map. But then Rupert Lowe comes out in the middle of it. And I think that's why a lot of them are really annoyed. But Ben can't be annoyed publicly, because then it collapses the chance of a merger. So he's in a really bad position.
Got something like 50,000 members now, haven't they?
70,000 from they last said. And I want to get on this point as well. They're not all British. There are people who are posting from America. So, I mean, I think this has been mentioned to me before. I don't know if it's by you or someone else, but when Charlie Downs was on the Load Seaters, when they first launched as the political pressure group, he was on there saying, oh, you can sign up from anywhere in the world. What Restore then did is, Restore. What they then did is basically transfer all those and count them as members for their political party. But that's unfair to do, because how many people in Advance, Reform, Tories? I know people in Reform that joined it on Twitter, obviously, but they did join it just to see what it was about. But obviously, you can't be a member of 2 political parties. Every single one of these parties says you can't be a member of another party, as is standard. And yet, what Restore have done is randomly announced it and said you're a member now, even though they're not signed up to the Electoral Commission.
See, the thing is, what it was, the same thing was said about Reform, as to that they had people coming in from outside, shall we say.
Right.
But what I have found is that it's actually very difficult to leave a political party in this country.
All of them have this problem. To be fair to them, I had a very easy time leaving the Tories. I do have to say that. They made it very easy.
Well, Labour didn't make it easy for me.
Yes.
I mean, it's no secret now. I am ex-Labour. People go on journeys. And they... it was conference 2018 when my own MP, Laura Smith, at the time, with her majority of 48, stood up and called for a general strike. And if most people had just kind of like clapped at it, but just kind of basically, settled down off, I could have dealt with that. But that's not what happened. Conference erupted. And in that moment, the scales fell from my eyes, because I saw what these people really were. This is, of course, in the Corbyn era, and that is, again, matter of public record. The amount of work that Wolves has done in investigative journalism is looking into these kinds of people, and that was a large part of what inspired it. So what did I do? I emailed my branch chairman, and I said, basically, I'm off. He says, perhaps our paths will cross again. That kind of email, longer version of that. They didn't notice. And when I say they didn't notice, I mean, it took a month of wrangling for me to come to that decision after conference, but they didn't notice. So they carried on sending me their branch meeting minutes and all that kind of thing. As far as I was concerned, I'd left, which I duly forwarded on to the local Conservative candidate. Yeah, that story. That continued for about, I don't mind admitting it, because I didn't actually do anything wrong. I'd left, and you're carrying on sending me your stuff because you didn't have the gumption to notice. I mean, So then
I still get Tory stuff. So
6 months later, I stood as a Tory councillor candidate in the highly ill-advised May 2019 election, the first opportunity that people had to punish the Tories for not leaving the European Union on March the 29th. And then they noticed. In between, I just kept getting emails saying, "You've cancelled your subs." And I was like, "Yes, I know."
I know, I left.
That's because I left you, prize twat. And then I got another letter saying, maybe you're just a bit hard up. You could pay less. I was on double subs. I was like, no, I'm on 40 grand a year. I'm just not giving it to you, that's all. And then they noticed when they saw me on the ballot paper, and then I got a letter saying that the likes of me are not welcome in Corbyn's Labour, which I fully intend to have framed at some stage. But my point is that was only when they noticed, and I wasn't even still paying them. So a lot of these people who've joined Reform, there doesn't seem to be a very easy way to leave Reform either. It's not a particularly easy thing to do, to leave any kind of. We've just been through Labour, the Conservatives, Reform. It's not very easy to actually leave. Such that a lot of this attempted enforcement of, single party membership. I mean, I recall even, the delegation that went across to the European Parliament in 2019, including people like Lucy Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for a fact, she was still a Tory, as well as being Brexit Party, and as were many others. And the Tories didn't really do anything because they knew for a fact that this was going on, and also that they would lose an awful lot of subs if they actually took any enforcement action, so they didn't bother. So while it can be the case that you are officially supposed to be able to leave a political party, actually it doesn't happen all that easily. One of the other people on this podcast I know for a fact is in both. So it's one of those, it's no surprise to me that we hear these kinds of stories.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think sure. I think my biggest problem with it is the foreign membership. You can't count that as part of your party membership, but they're not a political party yet. I've not even seen a registration. I mean, while we've got 3 minutes left, there is one more thing I want to say about Restore. Their plan seems to be we're going to be specifically just for Parliament. When it comes to councils and what have you, they have Great Yarmouth first, and they're basically expecting a load of insert constituency name first parties, from what I can tell, which to me seems mad. Ever heard of the term herding cats? That's all I can think is going to happen. And on top of that, with these councillors, I mean, you've had 13. Technically, I think 8 of them have come from independent, but the other 5 or whatever have actually directly come from Reform. I mean, do you expect them to stay forever? If you have these individual parties, what's your message discipline with them? How are you going to guarantee they're going to try and get people out to vote for you? It seems mad to me. I get the whole we want to make it bottom up, but realistically, like any corporation, which is what parties are, they do have to have message discipline from the top down to some extent.
these 13 councils are effectively independent, but with a
Yes,
label.
they are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now, it took Reform years to build up any kind of ground operation.
Oh, definitely. And it is very good now, I have to say. Gorton Denton's going well. I was very impressed with Runcorn. Took over a year for my branch to get good at it, which we did very well. We won a council by-election the other week. It was, which I was there every weekend, and it was very, very well organised, I have to say.
Yeah, but it's going to take at least that long then for whether it's advance, whether it's restore. It's going to take at least that long, probably longer. You're now getting very close to a general election, which may even happen sooner. So there is.
It's difficult. It's difficult to run a political party. I'm sorry, you do have to care about this minutiae. And just saying, yeah, we're just kind of outsource all this to people who want to make a political party. Sorry, that costs money. The only reason Great Yarmouth first was made was because Rupert Lowe put money into it. Is he going to put money into, I don't know, whatever Starmer's constituency is? What is he, St Pancras and Holborn? Are you going to make a St Pancras and Holborn first? Are you going to put money into that? No, of course you're not. So what's the plan? Just find 649 people and hope for the best.
Well, as Lord Hayward, the noticiphologist, once told me, I may have mentioned this before, he didn't tell me, he told Douglas Carswell, who was right in front of me, that this was on about the whole, you remember Change UK?
Yeah, I remember Change UK, yeah. Oh, I know this story, but say it again.
Yeah, I'll say it again. You said this is why they're not doing very well. It's totally different if you're not one of the two major parties, actually. So you haven't got a party machine behind you actually trying to win, an election. Yeah. It also costs, the figure I was told was that on average it costs about 18 grand. Yeah, you got to fund everything yourself to stand as a constituency MP, just to stand. So no, it's not cheap, but some of the people behind Advance, evidently, and Restore, well, they have money. What will matter is the quality of their campaigning operation. Now, just come back to Charlie again. He ran the London Mail campaign for Andreas Mickley. And it was basically, this is, again, riffing on the same theme of we're only interested in people who already think like us or are like us. It was basically the whole make London strong thing was basically a theme of gym lads. The trouble is that most people aren't gym lads. Consequently, they got 1.1% of the vote, and that doesn't surprise me at all. Especially when you've got a 22-year-old who then was campaign manager, it just doesn't surprise me at all. But yeah, it's when you don't think. I will end on this. When I was still mentoring Charlie, I remember saying to him once, he was driving, was in the car, we were on the phone, and I said to him, Charlie, how would you turn someone who wasn't already a traditionalist into a traditionalist? And it was as though I blew his mind. I was putting this whole different new concept into his head. As he had not really considered that he might have to take account of people who don't already think like him, and then you look at the way he's developed, if that's what you can call it, over the next 3 years. Or what a surprise! What a surprise! Well, and if he's listening, which he isn't, but if he is, all is not lost, Charlie. I still care for you. You abandoned me, but your decisions, other people's decisions, do not dictate mine. I still care. And there is a way back. Well, I think I will leave it there then. Thank you very much for that, I have to say. Well, yes, thank you for coming on, and obviously thank you for Peter B and Simon for the. Simon was barely on for a third of this in the end, but there you go. We'll get him on longer next time. Yes, I think my final comments on Restore as well, as you say. What have they done this week that's convinced anyone to their side? Who wasn't already in the mindset of I don't particularly like Farage but want Leo Thatcherism. So we'll leave it there. This is why I think they'll last 3 months, among with the other things I've said. So with that, thank you very much, Patrick, for coming on. Thank you very much for having me, Peter.
And thank you to the rest of those that have left us early. And obviously, thank you very much for listening. And until next time, goodbye.